Hey YouTube, Sean here, and welcome to another edition of After the Movie. Currently at my house right now. I just got done watching a new horror film called Oddity, and I want to give my quick impressions on this thing. So I definitely heard a little bit of buzz about this thing online. I hadn't watched any trailers or seen any clips from it or footage or whatnot. I just heard it was getting a good reception, so I thought, you know what? I'm at home. It's Labor Day weekend. I got a 3-day weekend. I'm going to go check out this horror film. So this is an Irish horror film. Not familiar with the director, not really familiar with the actors or anyone else involved in the making of this thing. I guess it's a little bit more on the low budget side, but they definitely use that budget well because I thought it was actually a rather effective horror movie. So the storyline this time, I don't want to get too much into it. I don't know. We'll just kind of ramble on. So the story of this is about a young, or not young, a psychic blind woman whose twin sister was murdered, and she has to try and figure out what's going on. She's also a clairvoyant, so she kind of feels and kind of sees objects and whatnot, and she can kind of tell you all the people tied to it. So she's got some psychic abilities there. There's a bit of a supernatural element to this thing, and part of the key to figuring out the murder of her sister, it involves this giant, like, kind of wooden mannequin that is rather creepy looking. This thing sits like there, like in the frame for the majority of the movie. Sometimes you kind of look away, it's kind of moved a little bit, like off camera or whatnot. And the whole time, it's just kind of placed there. You know something is wrong with this thing. You know something crazy or bad is going to happen, but it's just sitting right there the whole time. Like every time you're on screen, you just see this thing. You're just waiting for the moment for this thing does something kind of crazy or whatnot. And eventually we do get a payoff for that. But I think what really worked about this movie is there was an interesting hook to kind of start the film. Like they started out with this scene where you have this woman who is the sister who was murdered, and she goes to answer a door. There's some guy right there. It's got it's in Ireland or whatnot. So it's got one of those sliding like things to kind of see, like in movies where it's like just the wooden door and you have like this metal thing that slides so you can see who's kind of there. And it's this guy who was just randomly standing outside her door watching her, and he's like, I saw somebody else go into your house. She doesn't know who this guy is. Like, you're left wondering, like, who is this guy? Why is he here? And he's just trying to tell her, like, you got to get out of the house. But she doesn't have her phone on her. She doesn't have all these things. And so you're left wondering, is this guy telling the truth, or is there really somebody else in the house? So they kind of cut away from that. But of course, we do find out later on, maybe there was somebody in the house the whole time. So there is an interesting hook there. It kind of leaves you like, it kind of cuts away before you really find out what's happening. So you have to kind of watch the rest of the movie to figure that stuff out. So then we cut to a year later. That's where the blind woman comes in, who's the clairvoyant, goes to visit the ex, like her sister's, former husband. He's now living with another girlfriend who was, I guess, a friend of the one person who got murdered and whatnot. And there's definitely some tension between the sister and the new girlfriend. The husband's always working at some like institution with a lot of like kind of crazy, like dangerous patients. So he's doing all that stuff, and people who aren't really in touch with reality, like a psychiatric hospital. And you're kind of left wondering about this whole murder mystery aspect. There is a bit of a supernatural element to it as well. And it's taking these different things and kind of molding them to this intriguing story. But also, like, at the center of it is this damn mannequin. And every time this thing's on screen, you're just kind of looking at it. Like, it's a creepy design. It kind of reminds me of, like, Chatterer from, like Hellraiser. But, like, if you kind of took that and just made it like a big wooden sculpture, why anybody would want this thing in their house and not just immediately destroyed, I'd see that thing and be like, okay, that is a red flag. That you know what? Here, give this to Guillermo del Toro. He likes creepy shit. We'll throw it in his house. So yeah, there actually are some rather like really intense kind of suspenseful sequences. It definitely is a bit slow after that initial hook early on to really kind of get going. Performances are fine. Nobody really stood out to me as like amazing. I thought they all kind of did their job serviceably. Like there's no like a Toni Collette in Hereditary where that performance just kept me entranced the whole time. Here it's more about kind of the suspension and intensity kind of like as these sequences build up. So it definitely is a slow burn, but there are some really effective scares, I thought, in this film. Like there's a lot involving a camera, and there definitely were a few times where I was like, they kind of got me. And they're not like obnoxious like jump scares, like where you just kind of see them really coming a mile away at all times. But you're kind of left like it's a slow build up to that sequence. And you also have this mannequin thing that's just kind of there like at all times, and it just kind of placed like in the scene, and I think that kind of works to make it feel like you know something's going wrong. It's like it's right there like the whole time. You're just kind of waiting and anticipating for this thing to do something, and eventually it kind of does, and it is kind of a crazy payoff. There were a few things that did take me out of the movie that I just were just like, why is it even there? Like in this home, they had this trap door like on the second floor that just goes. You open it up, you fall right down to the bottom. Like I understand, like it comes into play like later on in the movie, but I'm like, who would design a home with this thing? Like that is a major safety hazard. Why aren't you like trying to fix that like right away? So, and then I also like too is like the movie starts out one way, you're thinking one thing about some specific characters, and then things kind of shift around more in the second act, and it ends on a bit of an interesting kind of like final note too, which I think did kind of work with given the setup that they had earlier on in the film. So yeah, like I said, I thought this is a pretty like good, solid horror movie. Some bits do definitely drag at times, and you know maybe following the girlfriend of the husband whose wife died, like she was just kind of fine. The blind woman character is the most interesting one in the movie. You do find some interesting things with the husband too, and I think like the suspenseful moments, what they build to, I think really delivers a rather interesting payoffs, because like you have some interesting hooks to kind of start this thing out, and just kind of seeing events kind of play out later on. You're thinking one way, then it kind of shifts on you, and then ultimately kind of ends in this way. The few bits that are kind of dumb, but I think overall, I think it was a pretty effective film, and I'm glad I saw it. So am I going to go back and rewatch it anytime soon? Probably not, but I think for people who haven't seen it, I think if you want a horror film that does legit have a few pretty good scares, and I'm not saying it's like intensely scary the whole way through, but there is suspense to it. There is tension. There is like that element you're just kind of waiting for something, and there is a payoff that comes like later on in the film, which I think made it all the more effective. But, there's not scary all the way through, but there are legit a few that did get me. So, and I don't scare too often. I watch horror movies pretty much all the time, but this one had a few bits that, okay, those are some pretty good ones. So I'll give you props for that. And plus, like I said, the mannequin thing may creep some people out. Like I'm just kind of sitting there. I'm like, okay, when is this thing going to do something? Because you just know it's going to happen. Like it just sits there and just kind of like every scene you're just waiting and waiting, and then you see it kind of shifted a different way. Then you kind of one character looks back and it's almost like staring at them. You're like, I know what you're going to do. I know what you're going to do. But yeah, I wouldn't have that thing in my house if I saw it. Movie like, okay, bye-bye. So yeah, but yeah, some good effective scares, an interesting hook to kind of start the film. And, it does pay off in a unique way. So performances are fine. Like I said, nobody was like totally stands out to me. Like I'm going to really remember that performance from years to come for whatnot. In fact, I don't even remember really like a lot of the characters' names half the time, but like I said, it did deliver on a few good suspenseful sequences. So yeah, I was glad I watched it. So if you've seen Oddity, what did you think of it? Post your comments down below. I think it's worth checking out at least once. You may really like it. You may think, it's kind of slow, a little bit dull for me. But that mannequin, man, that damn wooden mannequin, why anybody would have that in their house, I don't know. Unless it's, of course, Guillermo del Toro. So, yeah. But, yeah, good horror film overall. I liked it. And not going to rush to see it again, but it definitely had some bits where I'm like, okay, you got me there. So, yep, those are my quick unbridled thoughts on Oddity. Like I said, I didn't even watch a trailer for this thing. I had even no idea what the plot was, but it's kind of fun to go in these types of movies by. I'm like, okay, let me check this thing out. Let's see what all the buzz is about. And I can see some of it. So, yeah. All right, well, that's all I have to say. As always, take care now. Bye-bye then. And I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.